Hello guys, it's Mercurius, and I'm making this video because I've been getting a lot of requests lately from numerous people asking me to help them with the Evermorph, and I've seen a few guides linked around done by some people that didn't really go as in-depth as they should, and that's why I'm here to go in-depth and teach you guys how to install Evermorph, where to put Evermorph, how to inject Evermorph, and how to use it once you've gotten into World of Warcraft. So first things first is, if you do not already have it, you're going to need to install Winrar. I will give you a download link, and it's going to take you to this website right here, and you're going to select the language you use. Mine is English, so what I would do is I would go up here and I would hit English, and it'd open an install wizard, and just follow the instructions it gives you, and it'll be done in a matter of minutes and you'll be good to go. After that, you're going to go to this website and click on free download. This is Evermorph, and it's going to count down from 30 and give you a code to enter that code, and it's going to give you a folder called 4.3.4. It's right here, it looks like this. And once you're there, you're going to double click 4.3.4, and then it's going to give you this, and this is Evermorph and an ID list that gives you a bunch of Evermorph codes. And what you're going to have to do with this folder is take everything inside of it and click and drag it into your arena tournament. I'm going to delete the current one I have in there. I'm going to click and drag it here, and you're good to go. So after you're done with that, you can close it, delete it, go ahead. Now, a lot of problems people have is the wow.exe not found. So let's say we have this renamed, or we have this name too. There we go. So when you open World of Warcraft, when it's not wow.exe, it'll still run, of course, but any programs that you want to inject into it will not work because it's not wow.exe. So when I go to do Evermorph now, you see it says wow.exe is not found. That's because my World of Warcraft is named Maliko as a faggot. So what I'm going to do is rename this to WoW. And I only rename it to WoW. I don't add the .exe because in this program, the .exe is already added to the end of it. The only thing it needed is the WOW before it. So I've been unclear with people asking for help before, and I've told them to rename it to that, but all that does is add an extra .exe, and it won't work. So right now, it's called wow.exe.exe. You just can't see the final .exe. So just rename it to WoW, and it'll work just fine. So right now, when I open World of Warcraft, it'll take me to the login screen, and I'm not going to inject Evermorph just yet, because I'm going to add in a few macros that are safer to add before you inject it. So I'm on a rogue for this video to show you how everything is working. And right now, I'm going to zoom out because that's annoying, and you can see that it's just default rogue set, default spells. When I go over here and I'll apply recuperate really fast, you'll see it's just that default red glow that you normally get. It's nothing special, just the red glow. So when this is all done, that'll be way different. So my mount as well is just the woolly white rhino. So if I go and click and drag this down right here, you see just the default white rhino you get for being VIP. It is a VIP mount, and the Love Rocket is also VIP. I'll be changing both of these skins to look like something else for demonstrational purposes, and it'll look a lot cooler. And I'll also be changing the gear set that I currently have, which is the default Cataclysmic Gladiators set. I'll be changing the weapons I have. I'll be changing the spells I use, Shadow Dance, Slice and Dice, and Recuperate, to look like something else as well. And by the time this is all done, you'll know how to do it just as well as I do. So I have a couple of macros that I've made and put into a notepad for this. So let's start with the ground mount, the woolly white rhino. So I'm going to make a new macro and name it ground M for mount and hit enter. Now I'm going to paste that macro in and click and drag it to where I would normally have my mount keybind. I will do the same with the flying mount, the big love rocket. So flying M, and copy paste in that macro and click and drag it where my flying mount normally is. Now I'm not going to hit it just yet. I'm going to accidentally mute my mic is what I'm going to do. So I'm also going to add all of the other macros I have right here. Here is the race swap macro that I have set. So I will add that, race swap, and I'll give it an icon just so I know what to hit. And I will put it right here. Okay, so that is a race swap macro I have. This is a whole gear set macro. Now what this is changing the individual gear pieces I have on head, shoulders, chest, so on and so on to different gear IDs. So I'll teach you how to use this after I make it right here, and I'll just give it this icon because I don't care, and I'll name it Terrorforge and paste that in and put it right there so I know it's there. And this is the recuperate spell swap macro. It will swap my recuperate to something else. So there we go. And lastly is a multi-swap macro, and this will change multiple spells. Multi-swap. And I'll put that in, and I'll tell you how to make these macros, where to find the IDs to make them, and how to use them safely so it does not crash your game. So now let's open Evermorph, and I have my WoW renamed to WoW, and injection successful, and now this should close. There we go. So the first thing I would do once I open Evermorph is use a mount macro, and what mount macros do are change the skin to whatever code you entered. So for my woolly white rhino, I've changed the skin to be a sea turtle, and as you can see, instead of the rhino skin, it is now the turtle skin. So that means Evermorph has been injected successfully into my World of Warcraft. Mount macros will never crash your game, and you can use them non-stop. You can spam them as much as you want. As you can see over here, I'm spamming them and it's doing nothing to affect my game. So I'll also do the flying mount, which I've changed to the undead worm, frost worm or whatever. So there we go. As you can see in the top right corner, I am mounted on the big love rocket, but the skin is changed to this undead frost worm. So that means Evermorph is working correctly. Now it's safe for me to use more difficult macros. So what I'll do now is show you how to enter these macros in and how to get them working. So right now I will be applying the Terrorforge macro to myself. And how I do this is I type in /Evermorph right here, item 0, which would equal my head, and then the ID for the piece of gear I want to swap my headpiece into. In this case is the Terrorforge helmet, which the ID is 46125. I'll now show you where you can find that. So let me type in Terrorforge, and oops, I'll just hit enter and find it. So I've obviously typed it in wrong. I'm waiting for it now. Alright, whatever. So you'll find the piece of gear you want to change, and the ID will look like this. And it'll be up here in a 0 to normally 7-digit code. Sometimes it can go a bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. All right, so right here, I'll do this. This is the Terror Guard. It's different, but you'll see a code similar to this. wowhead.com/item equals, and then this is the chest piece for some random piece of shit gear for mop. Don't use Mist of Pandaria codes. They will just not work, or they will crash you. But the code for the gear that I'm going to be using is 46125. So there we go. I'll type that in, and it will now take me to the Conqueror's TerrorBlade, which is what I typed in wrong, headpiece. So there we are. /Evermorph item 0 to 46125. And if I were to just hit that singularly, it'd change my headpiece only to Terraforge. But I have the whole macro set in, so I will mount up to make sure that Evermorph is working properly, and then I will hit the macro. And you see that my gear is completely changed to TerrorBlade set, and I also made it so that the weapons are a Warglaive in the main hand and a Thunder Fury in the offhand. And I will give you the codes for each individual piece of gear and a site where you can find all of the gear IDs and gear sets. So now we're going to get into spell swapping, and that's the most difficult aspect of this program, which a lot of people have problems with or just don't know how to enter the macros. So spell swapping, what it does is it takes a current spell you're using, like let's say I want to take my spell Recuperate. By default, Recuperate is this faint red glowing you can see, faint red, orange glowing you can see around your character. And I want to change that to be something else. So what I'll do is take the macro I entered earlier, Recuperate, and I will click and drag that onto my action bar. And if I've done this correctly, I've checked that the mount is working, so that means it's safe to use. I should be able to hit the Recuperate macro, and now instead of that faint red glowing, you'll see it will be the Shadowmourne Visual High effect. There is also medium and low, but we're using the high just for the sake of the video because it looks the coolest. So I'll show you the macro again in Notepad. It's right here. And how you get those IDs is you go to Wowhead. So for Wowhead, all of the spells IDs will be in the URL. It'll say wowhead.com/spell equals, and then it'll give you this code up here, this ID, and it'll tell you what spell that is. So you can just search it in right here. Search in Recuperate, click on Recuperate, and it'll take you here. And this is the ID for Recuperate. So what you do is you type in /Evermorph. Now this tells the program that you want to use Evermorph. Then follow it up with space spell. Now this tells Evermorph that you want to change a spell. Now it needs to know which spell. So I will use 73651. That tells it I want to change the spell Recuperate. And I want to change it into the Shadowmourne Visual High effect. And the spell ID for the Shadowmourne Visual High effect is 25523. You can see it right up here in the URL, 25523. So that tells it, okay, he wants to change his spell Recuperate into Shadowmourne Visual High. I already have the macro made in-game. It is right here. So what I'll do is click and drag that onto my bars. It's right here, and you click it. And there we go, as I showed you earlier. Now Recuperate, instead of looking like faint glowing, is Shadowmourne Visual High. Now I have a multi-swap macro that I pre-made for the video. It's right here. And what it will do is change Recuperate to the Shadowmourne, Slice and Dice to make my character look darker, and Shadow Dance to give me a little nice effect that everyone loves. So what I'll do is find that. It's right here. I will click and drag that. You see it's called multi-swap. You can see it over there in the bottom left, the bottom right corner. And I will hit that macro. Now it's initiated all of these. So when I go to use recuperate, you'll see that I get the Shattermorn effect, and when I go to use slice and dice, it'll make my character very dark. And finally, when I initiate Shadow Dance, it will give me legendary dagger wings. And that's pretty much the sum of Evermorph. This is as far as you can go with it. I hope the video was thorough. I hope you can understand it. I hope that I wasn't talking too sketchy, because I do have a sore throat right now. I was sucking dick all last night, like, kid you not, dude. And dudettes. Yeah, so share it with your friends, share it with anybody you want. It's a very fun program to use, and the only bad aspects of Evermorph are crashing. I will explain to you exactly what you need not to do in order to prevent, or what you need to do in order to prevent yourself from crashing. And it's very simple. All you have to do to not crash is mount up with a mount macro. And if the mount macro does change the skin of the mount to something else, it is safe to use Evermorph. I will warn you, if you try to use a macro right before you enter an instance, and then you enter the instance, you will crash. If you use a macro right after you've entered an instance, like an arena for example, and you're in the starter room, use the mount macro. If it does not change, you will crash. Just be careful if you use a macro and then the option to enter an arena pops up. Wait about 15 seconds and then enter, and you will be safe and you will not crash. That's pretty much all I can say. Good luck changing your skins and your spells, and I hope you have fun with Evermorph.